In this example, we are looking at the complex number 2 minus 2i, and we're going to take the absolute value of that one. So to really get a good visual and for some practice for future triangle drawing in maybe late algebra 2 or pre-calculus, let's get into it. 2 is my real direction and negative 2i is my imaginary direction. So that means we'll be going right and down. So we want to focus on the bottom right area of the complex number plane. Here is my real axis. I was not abbreviating in the earlier examples, but now just trying to cut some time here. And that right there is the imaginary. Oh, see, I said I was going to, but I don't know what I did. I wrote the whole thing out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go 2 in both directions. So 2 on the positive real axis and negative 2i in the imaginary direction right there. So that puts me at this point right over here. And that's the point, 2 minus 2i. But if we want to find that absolute value, we are actually wondering how far that point is away from 0. So to do that, we're going to think of it as being the hypotenuse of a beautiful right triangle. This right triangle is actually extra special. 2 and 2 are the lengths of the sides. It's got a 90-degree angle. That actually makes this an isosceles triangle. That means that this angle, an isosceles triangle, I don't know if I said angle or triangle. That means that this angle and this angle, the two acute angles of the right triangle, are congruent. Congruent means that they are the same size, as are these two legs. The legs of the triangle, if it's a right triangle, the legs are the two sides touching the 90-degree angle. I just gave him a treat and he buried it in the chair. And now he's going to bark until I help him, until I find it. So what is the angle measure? Okay. I have to go get the boner treat. Okay, so 2 and 2 are the two legs, and the hypotenuse is this mystery amount right over here that's also indicating the distance away from the 0 value, all that. So the angles, before I was rudely interrupted, the angles here are congruent. How big are those two angles? Well, how many degrees are inside of a triangle in total? Any triangle. If you said 180 degrees, then you would be correct, my friend. So in total, you have 180 degrees. If you had an equilateral triangle, that would mean, or equal angular, really, that's the same. That would mean all the sides and all of the angles were equivalent to each other or congruent, and they would each be 180 divided by 3, 60. So 60, 60, 60. We have 90 degrees here, and the only remaining angles, those are congruent to each other. So 180, take away the 90, because 90 is accounted for the right angle, leaves us with 90 for the other two angles to share. You may remember another vocab word from geometry, which is complementary. Complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. So these two angles, these two acute angles, are 90, but they're also congruent. So what two angles add to give you 90 but are equal to each other? That would be 45 and 45. So this over here is going to be a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and it's one of the two special right triangles that you talk about in geometry, and they have a very important role in trigonometry later on. Now, if you covered 45, 45, 90 triangles, which you did, you should know that you were taught special formulas that give you the relationship of the sides to each other. So if you know one of the sides, you could really figure out the rest of them, okay? So, oh my God, like he's very silly. So what were those? I don't know if you hear that. He's losing his mind on the couch right now. if you remember those expressions for the side, sometimes they use the letter S. I'm not a big fan of using the S. I think it looks like a 5. So let's use, let's not use X because it, comes up all the time. Let's just use, I don't know, M. So we'll call this M and this M. Then the missing last piece of it right there is actually going to be M square root of 2. If I'm a little distracted with my explanation right now, I apologize. I'll try to do better next time. That right there is another way to think of this example. And if you really know that very, very well, you could have just looked at this example and been like, oh, obviously the final answer will be 2 root 2. That's it. Because you look at that, M and M are 2 and 2. The triangle's just flipped around. That means the missing side is 2 root 2. That's it. Okay. If they were 3, 3, it would be 3 root 2. Okay. That is all you would need to do if you really knew the 45, 45, 90 triangle very, very, very well. Now, if you did not recognize that right away, that's okay. We could still bust out good old Pythagorean theorem, right? A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You just get to that same answer in a different way. What would that look like? Well, you would have 2 squared plus 2 squared equals C squared. 4 plus 4 is C squared. 8 is C squared. Sorry. Okay. Now, if 8 is C squared, well, let's just go ahead and kind of scooch that up and around. So we're going to take it from here. So that means 8 is equal to C squared. Then we take the square root of both sides. We only want the positive because we're dealing with a distance. So the square root of 8 is C. And then we just simplify the square root of 8. We should all know 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, or 2 to the third. So perhaps you think of it fully broken down in that way. Maybe you only think of it as 2 times 4. Whatever gets you to your final answer, where it takes a pair to make a square, final answer is 2 root 2. So sorry about all the background noise. My animal is being an animal. And the next example, we're going to see another one that's a little messy when it comes to simplifying the radical. So you could click on that if you want to jump to that one, or go into the playlist and find one that you prefer. All right. Hope you're doing great, and hope you wrote this down, this special right triangle stuff. Very, 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 very important in upcoming part of the course, next course, the following course. You just gotta be really comfortable with that, and hopefully the 30, 60, 90 as well. Adios.